Hello guys, this is Jim here and welcome back to the next trading tips episode. Today we are going to be going over trend lines. So trend lines are something that is very important when trading. It's an indicator that is very often correct. So I'm going to be going over some examples today. I'm going to be talking a little bit about trend lines and yeah, when to use them, what to do, and when to buy and sell pretty much. So we're going to start off here with positive and negative gradient. So a positive gradient is when it's going up from the bottom left to the top right. So we can see here this is a bullish gradient, or it's got a bullish slope because we can see it keeps bouncing and it keeps going up and up and up. We can see that again here. So this trend line here is a bullish trend line. We can see it bounces up bounces off it 3 times, all higher, and then goes up. Whereas on the other hand, we have got a bearish one. So we can see here, this is a bearish trend line. We can see it bounced off, and finally broke there. But we can see it's bearish because it's sloping from the top left down to the bottom right. So that is a bearish trend line. So not all trend lines keep bouncing forever. Now, what I would recommend doing when drawing a trend line is something like this. So what you're going to make sure you're connecting 2 very well-known points together, and you can see there, look what happened when we joined those 2 together, continued the line, absolutely perfect. We caught the very top there, and if you were watching the chart at the time it hit that, you could have shorted and probably got it all the way down and made a lot of money off that. So trend lines are very important. Make sure you draw them correctly though. You've got to make sure you do 2 big points, and the further away the points are from each other, the greater the strength the trend line is going to be. So we can see, for example, here this is one built. We had 2 tops there, which were very significant, and then we can see it came down here and we consolidated around the trend line, moved up, and if you bought the breakout then on that trend line, you could have made some serious money there, especially if you were using leverage. Now, if you want to use leverage and margin trading, I did do a video, I think it was last Sunday I did it, so feel free to go and have a look at that. It's on my channel. It's about BitMEX. So what you've got with some trend lines is that once they are support, they can turn into resistance in the future. So we can see this trend line here. We got three points here, all rather significant, although I would have liked them to have been further apart in order for the trend line to be more solid trend line, and it having more support along it. But we can see it was support here. We found a little bit of support here, but then it turned into resistance here. So that's what's happened. We've come down off this, and we've bounced back off the underneath of the trend line, and it's turned into previous. Because previous support has turned into resistance. So that's one feature that you might get with a trend line. So another one we've got here is this. Now, I don't really know if I've drawn this exactly correct. So I'm going to leave it at that. I think that's fairly good. So we've got previous resistance there. We've got resistance at 2 real major points. We've got resistance here. And then what's happened is, as we've broken it, it's turned into a support line. So you can see here, it's bounced off a couple times there, as well as it bouncing off here. So previous resistance can also turn into new support. Now that is what's happened. That's what happened with this trend line here. We can see a really long trend line going back all the way to the start of 2017, and it didn't really bounce too much. We had a little bit of a resistance there where it showed, and we found big support around these levels here. So that is where this trend line has come in very useful. So previous resistance, we can see it was bouncing off there, although it was a bullish one because it was pointing upwards, had a positive gradient. It did turn from resistance into support, so that's another feature. So the more times that a trend line hits or touches the candles, then the stronger it becomes, and on larger time frames the trend lines are going to be much stronger than those on shorter time frames. So we can see a big time frame, I would say, is maybe something like this one here. So this is a large time frame. We had 2 points there, and if you connected it down, you could have found out there. You could have bought maybe around here, sold as soon as it hit, and then you would be knowing that it's going to be bouncing down until it breaks it again. We're in a bearish run. So we can see once you bought it there, you could have done good. So it was a very strong one, because then the price came back down and it found support on it as well. So that there was a good indicator that that was the right time to buy. So previous resistance becomes new support, as well as those on larger time frames being stronger, and the price is much more likely to react to them. So how would you trade a trend line? So for example, we've got a trend line here, so we can see it's bounced. I said a little bit ago that you would want to be buying around here, although there's no indicator currently on this chart that would tell you to. But if you were to have bought here, you would know that we've hit this trend line, it's bounced off of it, so you're going to be looking to sell. So, and then again, you're going to be looking, it's come above it and it's bounced down, you're going to be looking to buy there, you're going to be looking to buy there. Another thing we can see with this one here that came back to 2017, a long one, you're going to be wanting to buy there. So for example here, this is a trend line that I've just drawn here. So if I was going to be buying some Bitcoin, what I might want to do is, we can see it's got a couple points of contact, 2 lows there, and we can see it's fairly near the price. So what I would be doing is I'd be putting buy orders along this trend line. So if the price were to hit, then I'd be able to buy it. So that is how you might trade it. So that's what happens when it's bouncing off, but what happens when it goes through? So for example, we have got this trend line here. So what happened was the price went up, it found support in it, but it broke down below. So what happened there is where the price, the support was no longer there on the trend line, so therefore it fell through. More people wanting to sell around there than there were buying, so that caused the price to drop. In order for there to be an equal number of buyers and sellers again, the price dropped. So what you could have done there is, as you got the breakdown out of that, through that trend line, you could have sold or shorted if you wanted, and made some very nice money as it came down there. So one thing I do like to do when I'm trading with trend lines is to make sure that we have got confirmation. Now, a big thing about Bitcoin is that there are a lot of fake outs. So what you might do is, because this market is very highly manipulated, you'll get people pumping just above trend lines. So an example is this here. So what we've got is we've got a trend line here. This is a bearish one because it's down from the top left to the bottom right. And we can see it has 2 major points of contact, which is always needed for a trend line. And then we can see the price just goes above here. Now, what you would have got a lot of people doing is, because it's broken, then they would have bought. But that's another thing, that because this market is highly manipulated, you really should wait for proper confirmation once it's past the trend line. So we can see that this did not have proper confirmation. It pumped just above and then came back down. So what you would have likely had was the whales that were manipulating the market at this time. They were accumulating shorts around this area here, just as everyone was buying their longs, because we've just broken out. But yes, they would be buying and shorting, and look what happened after. So you've got to make sure you get proper confirmation. Another example you might have is a trend line like this. So this here, it looks like we've got almost a head and shoulders pattern here. I'll be going over things like that in videos to come in the future if you are not too sure what they are. But we can see that we got some support and resistance around there. We got some support bounced off there, some support there. We've been going down through it and back above and then back down again. So we can see from that because it's been regularly going through the trend line, and the trend line is not so strong, it's probably something that you should not be trading based upon. And maybe we can see that this really isn't a very good trend line because it's been going through it quite regularly, and therefore we can see it might just break down, and we can see it did there. So that's another thing. Make sure your trend lines, if the price keeps going through them, up and down, along them, or yeah, something like that, it's probably not the strongest trend line, and better off deleting it, because there are much better ones that you would be able to trade with. So overall, trend lines are incredibly useful. You can find some very good points like this one here. Another one, we can see it's bounced so many times off this trend line here. All of these are very, very useful to traders. We're going to make sure that your support and resistance lines are normally horizontal, and your trend lines are normally at an angle. So it doesn't really matter which terminology you use, but both have different purposes, and you can draw different conclusions from each one. But we're going to be going over some support and resistance lines in the next video, in the next trading tips episode. I'm going to give you some more charting patterns as well to have a look at when you are trading. So anyway guys, I think that's going to be it for today. Thank you very much for watching. If you did enjoy it, feel free to leave a like, subscribe of course if you are new, and I'll see you all in the next episode. Goodbye.